The introduction of the new Ford Escort and Ford Orion marks the start of a new chapter in the story of two of Europe's better-known motoring marques. No longer one family of cars, but two distinct model ranges, the new Orion is elegant, more traditional. The new Escort, dynamic, fun to drive. Each will appeal to quite a different class of buyer, and yet, despite this, the new models are technically very much sisters under the skin. This program has been designed to introduce you, the service technician, to those technical features. In doing so, it details any new or unusual service implications you may be faced with in the workshop. The program is in 6 parts. The first covers body features. The second covers Escort Orion's suspension and steering. Thirdly, we look at brakes, including a new ABS option that's available. The fourth part covers engines and transmissions. Part 5 details the new electrical system. And finally, we cover some of the options available, as well as taking a look at a few PDI actions. All these technical features and their service implications are also thoroughly detailed in the technician's literature that's been prepared for your use. In designing Escort Orion's body, close attention has been paid to the ease with which body repair can be carried out. An example of this is the door hinges, now similar to the ones on Scorpio. All you need to do to remove a door is slacken 2 securing bolts and disconnect the loom and the door stay. Replacement of body panels can be handled much like other Ford models. You'll find that the technician's literature details all the cut lines to be used to remove and replace individual panels and part panels. While most new panels are welded into place, be aware that the C-pillar joint to the roof panel on 4 and 5 door versions is not now welded. This uses a powerful glue to bond the 2 panels together, and the way this is done is detailed in your literature. Panel repair to minor dents in vulnerable areas is made easier by apertures through the body shell's inner skin. It's a useful feature that cuts down the need to replace complete panels when a small dent can be knocked out. As on all Ford models, corrosion protection on Escort and Orion is extensive. The important point is that where body repairs are carried out, that protection must be fully restored. Your literature carries detailed explanations of both the type of protection, where it's applied, and what you should do to bring a vehicle up to the required standard. You'll find that the windscreen, the rear quarter window on 5-door derivatives, and the rear screen are directly glazed to the car body. While replacement procedures for this type of fitting haven't changed, watch out for the rear screen on Escort, which doesn't have a rubber molding. The glass is a very precise fit, so you'll need spacers to position it. Under the bonnet, a new safety feature on Escort Orion is the secondary bulkhead running across the engine compartment. It means the battery now sits in a well-protected area, and on right-hand drive vehicles, the battery sits on the other side of the engine compartment. As on Fiesta 89, both front and rear seats are the new molded design that enables seat cushions to be removed and replaced without difficulty. But apart from these points, you'll find that Escort Orion's bodywork and interior trim fittings hold no surprises for those working in the body shop. Escort Orion's suspension is a mix of new and well-proven features. It provides a comfortable ride, good road holding, as well as being highly reliable. At the front, McPherson struts are seated on A-shaped suspension arms, these arms locating on the newly designed crossmember through 2 vertical bushes. In service, should you need to replace the McPherson strut, there's a new spreader tool for releasing the strut from its lower seat. Otherwise, there's nothing new about this procedure. On all variants, front wheel bearings have a press fit in the hubs and are adjusted and lubricated for life. However, on diesel models and those with automatic transmission or air conditioning, the hubs have double ball bearings, there are reinforced axle shafts with additional splines, and there's a larger hub nut. As a result, there's a revised procedure for bearing replacement and some new tools. To press the hub out of the bearing, you still use the existing thrust pad. Once the snap ring is out, you need to fit the separator to force the hub out of the bearing, again with a tool you'll have used before. The bearing inner race is in two halves, and at this point the inner half is still located in the bearing. The outer half is on the wheel hub. To remove the outer half, you still use the thrust pad, together with a new special tool. In effect, the tool clamps over the bearing race so it can be drawn off. Not a particularly difficult operation, as long as you really tighten the sleeve of the tool so it grips the bearing race firmly. The second stage in the procedure is to remove the double roller bearing itself. You take out the bearing roller cage and insert the inner race you've just removed from the hub. Then put these two back into the spindle carrier. Don't try and push the inner race into place on its own, it simply won't fit. To get the double roller bearing assembly out of the spindle carrier, you use an existing two-legged extractor. Make sure its legs are securely seated and that the spreader engages below the bearing inner race you've just fitted. From there on, it's just hard work with the spanner to pull the roller bearing out of the spindle carrier. Although it's unlikely you'd be taking the roller bearing out unless it was damaged, it's worth mentioning that once removed, it can't be reused. To install a new bearing in the spindle carrier, you use an existing pressure spindle and an adapter plate. Only the upper part of the tool is new. And once aligned, the procedure calls for a bit more muscle power to push the bearing home. As we've seen earlier, the hub has a press fit in the bearing. The tools required to install the hub are those you will have used before, and the procedure to be followed should be familiar. The final part of the assembly is to refit the large snap ring, making sure it's securely located. To engage the splines of the reinforced axle spindle with those in the hub, there's another new special tool. This matches the larger diameter of the thread on the spindle shaft, enabling you to pull the axle into position. The rear suspension is new to Escort Orion, although you'll recognize the design from Fiesta 89. There's a twist beam axle located by trailing arms fixed to the body through rubber bushes. Coil springs and coaxial shock absorbers are used. The hub, with its spindle and the brake drum, is fastened to the axle beam flange by 4 bolts. Once these are removed, the drum assembly can be lifted away, giving good access to the rear brakes. Should you need to dismantle the rear hub to replace the bearings, the procedure and the special tools are exactly as for Fiesta 89. In general, though, these bearings need no service attention. The trailing arms of the twist beam axle are fixed to the body through rubber bushes. Should you need to replace these bushes, you'll need to use a new special tool both to remove the old bush and fit the replacement. While this tool is simple enough to fit for removal of a bush, make sure that the 30mm thrust washer is fitted correctly. This spreads pressure evenly on the bush as you pull it out. A convenient feature of this procedure is that the rear suspension doesn't have to be removed from the car. You merely drop the trailing arm you need to work on. Before fitting a new bush, coat it and the seat in the trailing arm with liquid soap. In reassembling the special tool for installation of the bush, make sure that the 13mm thick spacer is correctly positioned on the spindle next to the rubber bush. This will ensure that the bush seats correctly. Fitting the special tool for installation is done in reverse, so that the bush is effectively pushed into position. Should you need to work on the rear suspension of an estate variant, you'll find one difference compared to passenger cars. The shock absorbers and coil springs are individually mounted, with the shock absorbers inclined to give better interior load space. There are no special service implications, however. A point to bear in mind whenever you need to work under either Escort or Orion: you mustn't lift the vehicle with a jack positioned, for example, under the rear axle for fear of damage. The vehicles must be lifted with the jack or hoist positioned at the specified points. The steering on Escort Orion is largely the same as fitted to their predecessors, namely the well-proven rack and pinion system. A point to bear in mind is that should you need to get to the rack in service, its protected location means that the front crossmember will have to be lowered first. One special feature of this steering is its progressive ratio. This eases steering effort the more it's turned away from the straight-ahead position. It's achieved by special tooth forms on the steering rack, the center section having a wide tooth pitch which decreases gradually towards either end of the rack. It's a system that combines lightness of steering where the car is being maneuvered in tight spots with secure straight line stability. For those favoring power steering, this is now available as an option on Escort Orion. The system is basically identical to that available on Sierra. On petrol engine vehicles, you'll find the power steering pump is fitted above the alternator in front of the engine. The fluid reservoir is fitted to the side of the engine installation and has clear, visible level indicators. On diesel derivatives, the installation is slightly different. The pump in this case is fitted below both the alternator and the fuel injection pump. In both cases, however, the service implications, such as for bleeding the hydraulic system, are identical. They're also the same as on Sierra. The brake system on both Escort and Orion uses diagonally split dual-line hydraulics, serving rear drum brakes and front discs. A useful service feature on these front brakes is the method of caliper release. By removing a securing clip and a pin, the caliper can be folded upwards to let you reach the brake pads. Another new feature is that the handbrake now operates through two separate cables serving the rear brakes. Adjustment is still handled through a single adjuster by virtue of the cables being routed through an equalizer. There's a new electronically controlled dual-channel ABS brake system, optionally available on Escort Orion. Rather than increasing stopping power, this new system guarantees that all-important steering control is maintained by preventing front-wheel lock-up under heavy braking. It does so by controlling each hydraulic circuit according to the wheel speed of each front wheel. The principal components in this new type of ABS system are the electronic control module, always mounted on the driver's side whether a car is left or right-hand drive. The actuation unit consists of a brake booster and a special tandem master cylinder. Below this is the hydraulic control unit, comprising an electric motor with a two-circuit pump and a modulator valve block with a pair of electronically controlled inlet and outlet valves for each hydraulic circuit. Each front wheel is fitted with a sensor that continually monitors wheel speed, sending this information back to the electronic control module. There's a combined stoplight switch and pedal travel sensor fitted at the top of the brake pedal. The sensor sends information on the pedal position to the control module. And finally, integrated with this system, there's a load apportioning valve located above the twist beam rear axle. In operation under normal braking where neither front wheel shows any tendency to lock up, Escort Orion's brake system operates in a conventional manner. However, the wheel sensors are constantly monitoring wheel speed and sending this information back to the ABS module. The module compares wheel speed and road speed to data stored in its memory. Should wheel speed drop below a certain point for the given road speed, ABS concludes that the wheel is about to lock. The module instantly sends an instruction to the hydraulic control unit. This unit then switches into operation and reduces hydraulic pressure to the circuit of the wheel that's locking up. As wheel speed increases again, the hydraulic control unit re-establishes hydraulic pressure to increase braking effect. This action of reducing and increasing hydraulic pressure takes only a split second and is constantly repeated until the ABS module concludes that wheel speed and road speed will remain in balance without its assistance. At the top of the brake pedal, there's the pedal travel sensor. This constantly monitors the pedal position, enabling the module to control that position by maintaining an optimum reserve of brake fluid. Should it fail, there's quite a dramatic and uncomfortable change in pedal feel. Routine service on vehicles with ABS involves nothing more than for those without ABS. None of the principal components need routine attention. The brake fluid reservoir is the same as on non-ABS vehicles, and bleeding the brakes is done in exactly the same way. For the first time, though, on ABS, the system includes a self-test facility, so helping diagnosis. The star tester known from EEC4 systems is used, with a new adapter enabling it to be plugged into the ABS test plug located next to the electronic control module. Using your ABS literature, fault codes can then be summed up and compared with information given in the literature. More detailed diagnosis can be carried out with a breakout box connected to the plug of the electronic control module. One point to be aware of, there's a new securing latch that holds the multiplug in position. When you open it, push this latch right down to partially lift the plug out of its seat. If you don't, you'll never get the plug out. Also new is a three-way connector that's used to connect 3 sockets on the breakout box to perform specific tests. These tests are all fully detailed in your literature. And a final point on ABS, when you reconnect the control module multiplug, make sure the 2 lugs on the plug engage properly. This action lifts the latch a little so you can close it securely. To adjust the load apportioning valve, there's a new special tool which is issued with each new model. It's placed in the ashtray before the car leaves the plant. Adjustment is simple enough. The point to remember is that the small tongue on the plastic tool should point towards the springs. This adjustment should be carried out with the vehicle unladen, the fuel tank about half full, and the car standing on its wheels. As with its predecessors, Escort Orion's engines are all transversely mounted and drive through a transaxle to the front wheels. All these engines are known to you, although there are 1 or 2 detail refinements you need to know about in service. The range of engines includes the 1.1 and 1.3 HCS carburetted engines, the 1.4 and 1.6 CVH engines, which use either the CFI or EFI fuel injection, and in some markets are carburetted, and the 1.8-litre diesel unit. The HCS engines now have a sandwich-type valve cover to dampen noise, and it's important that this is torqued to specification with bolts being tightened in the correct sequence. There's otherwise a chance of leaks. All carburetted engines are fitted with a new range of engine management modules. The main point to bear in mind is that each module is programmed to suit the needs of a particular engine, so check carefully on which is which. They do look very similar. On fuel-injected engines, the management functions are split between the small module that controls the disc system and the familiar EEC4 module that handles everything else. You'll find the EEC4 module behind the A-pillar on the passenger side, where it can be reached fairly easily for any test procedures. As to those tests, they're detailed in your literature, although there's no change to the method of testing, providing you've got the right lead. All Escort Orion engines use the DIS ignition system. Its principal components include the dual spark coil that feeds the spark plugs, the sensor that reads engine speed and crank position off the flywheel, and the relevant management module. This sensor detects a toothed pattern on the flywheel, which indicates the precise engine speed and crank position. From the moment the engine runs, this information is relayed to the engine management module, the sensor accurately reading every subtle change. The module computes this information together with signals from other sensors and data stored in its memory. And using these computations, the module sends a constant flow of instructions to the dual spark ignition coil. These instructions trigger the coil to spark two plugs simultaneously, one serving the cylinder on compression stroke, the other serving the cylinder on exhaust stroke. In this way, the DIS system maintains both constant and absolutely precise control of the engine's ignition. It's a system that needs no attention or adjustment in service. One system you'll still find on 1.6-litre carburetted engines where a vehicle has air conditioning, automatic transmission or power steering is the throttle position sensor and throttle plate control motor. This sensor provides information on the throttle position to the engine management module to control engine idle. When either the automatic transmission is engaged or the air conditioning switched on, the engine management module signals the throttle plate control motor to open the throttle slightly to compensate for the extra load and so maintain engine idling speed. 1.6-litre CVH engines are fitted with the multi-point electronic fuel injection system known as EFI. 1.4-litre engines have the central fuel injection system known as CFI. Both systems are well known, and there have been no changes that affect service work. On each fuel-injected vehicle, there is an inertia switch located at the bottom of the A-pillar on the driver's side. It cuts off the current feed to the fuel pump should the car be involved in an accident. And if needed, you can stick your finger in through the hole in the panel to reset the switch. As to the 1.8-litre diesel unit, there have been no changes that affect service work or special tools. There is, however, a new hydraulic front engine mount designed to absorb the diesel engine's vibration. All Escort Orion vehicles are fitted with the well-proven transaxle as standard equipment. It provides smooth, positive gear changes and is highly reliable. All service procedures and special tools are known to you. In addition, Escort Orion is offered with the CTX automatic transaxle as an option. Apart from minor changes to the casing to enable it to be installed, its design is the same as the unit fitted to Fiesta 89. All repair procedures and special tools are therefore the same. There is one new service procedure, which is the way you adjust the CTX control cable. There's a new adjuster set into the cable which first needs to be released. You then pull the throttle shaft to the full throttle position, which sets the self-adjuster. To ensure full throttle can be achieved, Remove the clip from the throttle cable and pull the cable to remove any slack. Then get someone to kick the accelerator pedal fully down and replace the clip. Just to make sure the adjustment has been effective, finally check that the accelerator pedal does achieve full throttle. The electrical system on Escort Orion is new and offers certain genuine benefits in terms of the ease with which service work can be carried out. The system is modular in design. The number of electrical systems connected to the central electric box depends on the number of options fitted. For example, there's one serving the engine compartment, another serving the various electrical components in the doors, such as power windows and central locking, another serving all lights at the rear of the car. The system has the prime benefit of being simple in its layout. The power feed starts at the battery, so no surprises there, but bolted directly to the positive terminal of the battery is a new component, the maxi fuse box. This houses individual maxi fuses which protect the power feed to the central electric box and one or two other systems. The fuses vary in rating, the red one, for example, being 50 amp, the yellow ones being 60 amp, the black ones being 80 amp. Should you need to remove and replace a fuse, the fuses rated 50 amp or lower can simply be pulled out and pushed home. The others are different. Before removing them, you must disconnect the fuse box from the battery. You'll then find that both the yellow and black fuses are bolted in place. The bolts need to be loosened to remove one of the fuses. This method of fixing is needed to guarantee a good contact for the relatively high currents that are handled. The central electric box is conveniently located behind a panel under the dashboard. Removing the panel gets you to all the fuses. The box also houses all essential relays which switch and protect the various systems. These are located on the top, while underneath the box is where all the individual looms are plugged in. To get to the relays or loom plugs, you need to remove the lower fascia panel. By releasing a securing clip, the box can be swung down to reach the relays. One small point, where a particular system is not fitted to a car, you'll find the relative relay socket may be bridged by a buzz bar. All electrical plugs are the new type first introduced on Fiesta 89, and there are one or two new ones introduced on Escort Orion. The advantage with these plugs is that they not only provide a secure connection, individual wires can be removed for repair using 3 new special tools now added to the special repair kit. This repair kit contains all materials, tools and instructions for this work. The 3 new special tools are specifically designed to dismantle the new plugs on Escort Orion. Their use is carefully detailed in the accompanying instructions. On European Ford models in some markets, a feature that's available also with Escort Orion is the headlamp adjustment. It's useful where heavy loads are being carried in the boot and headlights would otherwise be pointing up into the sky. From a service point of view, the thing to remember is that this adjuster must be set to 0 before you undertake any headlamp alignment. If this is not done, your alignment will be faulty. In this final section of the program, we'll take a look at some of the options offered on Escort Orion and cover a few points on PDI requirements. Central locking is one of the options available. The system is similar to that fitted to Escort Orion's predecessors, with an electric motor operating the door locks. In service, therefore, there's nothing new. The tailgate lock, however, is mechanical, being operated either from inside the car with the tailgate release or by a key. Air conditioning is an option available in all markets. The system is very similar to that fitted to Sierra, although modified slightly to suit installation requirements. There's a convenient sight glass to ease regular checks on the level of refrigerant in the system. The compressor is located below the alternator and driven by a belt off the crankshaft pulley. The power windows available are very similar to those on Fiesta 89. An electric motor drives the winder mechanism which winds or unwinds a cable to raise or lower the window. One of the most important service actions, if not the most important you'll have to carry out on Escort Orion, is the pre-delivery inspection. It's a detailed procedure, as the PDI check sheets show, but one which has to be carried out absolutely meticulously to ensure a 100% handover to the customer. As with any routine work, there's always a tendency to skip over what seem like insignificant checks. And yet it's things like a clock that hasn't been set, a glove box that doesn't close properly, that really gets up a customer's nose when he or she picks up their new car. Not surprising, really. They've paid a lot of money for the car and have every right to expect it to be perfect in every detail. Wouldn't you? Perhaps the best approach to adopt to all PDI work is to keep asking yourself, if I was the customer buying this car, would I be satisfied with something that's incorrectly adjusted? If you're honest with yourself, you wouldn't. So why should the customer? Whether it's the road checks, mechanical checks, the options, or even the final preparation and cleaning, set yourself the highest possible standards for every individual PDI check. In that way, you make the most positive contribution you can to guaranteeing customer satisfaction. Thereafter, it's up to you to maintain that satisfaction by providing the highest possible quality of service and repair on this new Ford Escort and Ford Orion.